Awesome. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today for the State of Threat Modeling Report official release webinar. I'm Shuni Su, the Community Manager of Threat Modeling Connect, or TMC, as many of us like to call it. If you're new here, welcome. TMC is the largest threat modeling community worldwide. Our mission is to help protect the systems that run our modern world today through threat modeling and secure by design practices. We are a global community with TM chapters in counting. Wells and Vienna chapter just joined us this summer, and we have new chapters launching in New York City and Raleigh-Durham in North Carolina very, very soon. Quick thank you to our sponsor, Areas Risk. They provide an enterprise automated threat modeling solution that helps make secure design a scalable practice. If you're looking to automate, scale, or expand your threat modeling program, definitely connect with your team afterward. And here is today's agenda. We'll start with this short introduction. I have a few brief housekeeping items. And then we'll move into the exciting part of fireside chat with the SOTM report authors, Dave Soldera and Grant Ongers, moderated by Paul Spruce. After that, we will open the floor for questions. And finally, we're going to wrap up with a group photo as part of our TMC meetup tradition. And I have a few closing announcements before I let you go. Quick housekeeping items. Please keep yourself on mute unless you are speaking. And different from most of our typical meetups, we ask you to keep your camera off wherever possible until we take the group photo at the end. This will help us save the bandwidth. And you are free to drop your questions in the chats anytime throughout this session. The questions will be answered during Q&A, or our moderator, Paul, may decide to bring them in if they tie to specific topic that's in the discussion. If we run out of time, Dave and Grant will follow up afterwards in the TMC forum to answer any questions that are not able to cover in this session. And yes, we will take the group photo at the end. So with that, it's my pleasure to hand things over to our moderator, Paul Spruce, who will introduce our guest, the SOTM report authors, Dave and Grant, and kick off the fireside chat. Paul, over to you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Spruce. I am a principal security consultant, and today I am going to be the moderator for this awesome fireside chat around the State of Threat Modeling report. I'd like to introduce the guest speakers, Dave Soldera, lead security architect at Electronic Arts, and Grant Ongers, a security practice lead at eSynergy. Welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
No worries.
Thanks.
So I think if we can just move on, and I think we can just kind of jump straight into it, really. Dave, I kind of want to ask you the question. All right, this has been a lot of hard work's gone into this, but why was the report created?
Yeah, I think there's sort of some immediate value to running these sorts of surveys. I think we sort of historically came up with this idea really a year or two back, and it was more of just an idea at the time. And I think the goal really is to say, you know, we want people to we want to know how people threat model. Basically, I find it's one of those things where you can go and read a book, you can, you know, go to a conference and see people talk about it or read blog posts, but it's very hard to get a very broad overview of how people are doing this activity. And I think it's really beneficial if we had that information, and that was somewhat of the driving force behind it, because everyone that is into threat modeling will go away and figure out how to do it themselves, but doesn't really tell you, you know, how everyone else is doing it, and that feels like it would be useful information. I hope everyone sees that it feels like it should be useful, and that was really the idea behind it. And then the opportunity really only came because the Threat Modeling Connect community was created, and it seemed like you had an easy way to reach out to a lot of people to get them to answer these questions. So that was more or less the genesis of the idea, I suppose you'd say.
Cool.
So basically a long held desire, Dave, and then now an opportunity, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
So we probably all of us on this on the call or people watching have filled in a survey of some sorts. And Grant, I'm going to fire this one over to you. Okay. Why was it kind of structured in this way, particularly?
so the question you actually want to ask, Paul, is why was it so damn long and so complicated? The easy answer, or the right answer for that is it's hard, right? Threat modeling is hard. It's complex. It's complicated. We do it in very complicated ways, in very different ways. There's just too much complexity to it. Dave and I spent hours, Dave, hundreds of hours, trying to make it as concise and as small as we could and still get all the value. The thing is that there's just so many questions to ask, and there are still 100 questions that I want to ask about, how threat modeling is done that we didn't get around to, or we could have gone into way more detail. The slide that Chinning is currently showing us is exactly the process we went about to go and put together the survey. What I can't underline enough is how many hours were spent talking about the language, the words. How much detail do we go into? How much do we provide? We wanted to make it as easy as we could, and I think this was the best we could do it.
Yeah, I would agree. It is a very, very complex and wide-ranging, some would say subjective, sort of subject and topic. So it's enabled to structure the survey in a way that can kind of get rid of those biases and just ask for a sort of objective answers is it must have took its toll on the pair of you, I imagine.
I would say it's quite the line in there about aligning to like the threat modeling manifesto and the threat modeling capabilities that people have created. It's a good example, right? Because if you look at the threat modeling capabilities, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's got to be sort of 20, 25, even more capabilities called out. And these are all the aspects of threat modeling. And so when we were looking at it, and in all honesty, we sort of came up with lots of questions, and then we realized, well, actually there's this list of stuff out there already that represents the activities involved in threat modeling. So if we want to know how people threat model, we should be asking about these capabilities. So then we went through an exercise of like alignment and said, well, okay, what questions do we have that currently align to the capabilities, and which ones are we missing, and really which questions can we even come up with questions to ask and find out, elicit from people information about these different capabilities. And in some we were successful, I think, in some sense, but other ones we missed. But just by the sheer number alone, it meant that if you wanted to know about the whole range of things, you had to ask a lot of questions. So that's sort of the reasons why we ended up with as many as we did.
And you talk about sort of the participants in the survey, and how you framed questions. So who was the report for? And then there'll be a follow-on question. So who was the report overall for? And then a follow-up question with that would be, what did we hope to gain from the report itself?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where when you start out with a task like this, you really have to set your overall goal. You have to set your overall guiding principle of what it is you're trying to achieve. And I think with threat modeling, there's a lot of opinions about how things should be done, and people will give you answers and how they do stuff, and that sort of is perfectly true and valid information, but it necessarily, they know that it works for them and in some of their situations they've been exposed to, but it doesn't necessarily tell everyone in every situation what would work for them or not. So it's good information, but what is great information is to get sort of like a community average. And so one of the guiding lights was really, let's make sure we're asking people how they actually do threat modeling, and not asking people, hey, what is your opinion on how you should be doing this? I think there's a big difference between those two things. And so that was like one of the guiding principles. And then it was really like to serve the community, right? Like, can we come up with data here that will ultimately be valuable to everyone who does threat modeling as their part of their day-to-day experience. But it's not perfect. So you can see in this sort of slide here, we talk about, who, where, when, what, and why, how, sorry, but not so much why, right? Surveys are good at some things and not great at everything, and trying to elicit the why and the complex relationships for why people do things. That's much harder to ask questions around, or you can ask the question, but then it's very hard to average the information over a community of respondents to make that useful information. So there's a lot more limitations in that sense when running these surveys to make sure that we get an answer that we can then average over a lot of people and say something broadly about it. So that's sort of one aspect to it. And then the other aspect is the point of these surveys isn't really to tell people, what the right thing to do is. We would all love that, right? We would all love if, hey, answer these questions and now we know the right way to threat model. But when you think about it, there obviously isn't really such a thing, right? It's so situation dependent. And so, we can't answer what the right thing is to do, and whether or not even what other people do is going to work in your particular situation. I still think there's a lot of useful information we can draw out, right? So like a lot of the time we do things and it's like, does everyone align on how things work? And so finding out where people are like, everyone definitely does things this way, versus there's a fairly even split of people who, are satisfied with tooling or something like that, right? These are all the things that a survey is good at telling you. And then the challenges are obviously a huge part of the survey. I think the beneficial thing is to capture for everyone what are our common challenges, not just how do we threat model, but like where are our pain points. And so I think that's kind of useful to see that, have everyone relate to each other in terms of where we struggle with this activity. And then, there's huge opportunities off the back of all of that for having shared our common experience and shared our common pain to everyone lay out the challenge from the data and be like, hey, we have some data backing up where we exist as a community. What is the good things and the bad things? How can we go away and take that data and turn it into something that drives the community forward? What do you think, Grant?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the 2 points that I just want to underline that you hit there, Dave, are one, don't take the survey to be do these things that are most popular as this is what the community says is the right thing to do. Because very clearly in the data, and we've done our best to try and put that together in the imagery and in the graphics we've used, there isn't a right way to threat model. So far, we haven't found the silver bullet that will solve all your threat modeling woes. It isn't there. So that's the first thing. There isn't a right thing. When Dave was talking about it's situation dependent, it's got to do with culture, it's got to do with type of organization, it's got to do with size of organization, size of teams, the types of things you're threat modeling. And if you're looking at the reports and you're looking at the raw data, picking your size organization, your type of industry that you're in, the size of teams that you're in, if there are enough data points there, it might give you a pointer as to things that could work. You still need to try them. You still need to figure out if it works with your culture. So yeah, those are the two. And then the other one, the challenges. What I love most about the challenges is that I'm no longer the only one frustrated by it. Like there are other people that also really are annoyed by that thing, and that's cool, because hopefully that means somebody's going to fix it. That's what I love about communities. That there will be people that go, that's clearly a problem for enough of us, and so either somebody will create a commercial thing to build that will help us fix that, and that'll be great. We can go buy it, or it'll become a project, an OWASP project perhaps that will spin up out of this, and we'll actually get something to solve that problem or help us solve that problem. So yeah, two key pieces.
I noticed from the challenges point of view, reading the report, it was like a sigh of relief, as if to say, haha, I'm not the only person that feels this. Okay, I'm not going mad or anything like that. Interestingly, Grant, you talked about the data sets and the sort of the graphics and all that lot. What does the outcomes of this report tell us?
So there's a bunch, and we've got a couple of highlighted reels that we could show, which are on the slide deck as well. Number one, everyone loves Stride. Stride is still king. Everyone's still using Stride in some way, shape, or form. That's probably the number one takeaway. But that was expected, right? We knew that was going to happen. We tend to use pretty generic tools. There isn't a lot of specialized tool usage, which either means we haven't realized there are specialized tools out there, or we're not getting the budget to buy them, or something. And I guess that's kind of like questions we have to ask next, like down the line. I love the fact that everyone uses trust boundaries. I love trust boundaries. Slightly different to how I generally use them, as like the barrier between this is the system I'm concerned with right now and everything else is outside. But we do talk about components that trust each other, so that's cool. We do a lot of diagramming. That's obviously a thing that we're going to see. And we tend to use architecture or design issues. Those are the focus points for housewrap models. But, and this is kind of sad because it is expected, we don't ask the fourth question enough. We don't figure out whether we've done a good enough job. And that's unfortunately comes through the data. We get threat modeling out the way, and then we don't go back and revisit necessarily.
Yeah.
And then there are a few unexpected ones, which Dave, maybe you want to run through the things that were cool or not so cool, but unexpected.
Yeah, if we can go to the next slide. I have to say that the trust boundaries one that you mentioned, Grant, is a great example where you love trust boundaries. I don't really like using trust boundaries.
Yeah.
It's just one of those examples, right? Where like, you know, people do things different ways, and in that example, I find myself in quite the minority compared to everyone else. But you know, it's just whatever way you find that works for you. So these are all those expected ones, and this list of unsurprising ones, and even on the next slide are all taken from that conclusions at the very end of the threat modeling survey report. Just to sort of categorize them a little bit, to sort of say, and this is all a bit subjective, right? Like, you know, what is most expected? What are the things that we think we already knew? So there's things here that are maybe we weren't so sure, but they aren't that surprising to learn. Are quite common in the community. So that, and you know, we sort of split these up in a certain way, and maybe your point of view is different on them. It all depends a bit. But I actually was when I sort of came up with some of these conclusions, it was a bit like this first one here, that threat modeling practitioners live off the land. Maybe I'm giving us all a bit too much credit there, but it did really seem from the data that, like, you know, when asked, hey, what are your sources that you pull from? You know, we'll just take what we can get, because one of the main challenges is we never have enough information. We're always had this incomplete list of system components or information about the system. So why would we ever turn down any information that's put forward to us from anywhere, really? So but that sort of makes
even,
sense, right?
Even
It's
when
not,
it's super hard to integrate, like some things are just, you're getting data, but it's hard to use. You're still going to try and use it. That's clear. Yeah.
absolutely. And then, you know, other stuff like sharing threat models. And this is sort of like, it's again, for me, I didn't think this came as a huge surprise, but it was again almost like a little bit sad to have to say that we don't really do enough in this part to push out threat models either externally, which is a very hard problem to solve, but a lot fewer people. Well, I would say it's relatively expected, but I was a bit on the fence. You know, even internally, how available do we make the threat models to the rest of the company that we work in, and things like that? And the numbers there sort of indicate some people do it, but it's not hugely widespread. And this is one of those ones where you can then sort of draw into, well, are there implications here and what have you? And, you know, if you wanted to hear another sort of controversial opinion about it, you could argue that, like, well, hey, maybe if we shared them more and made them of more value to lots of different people in a company, maybe that would change how much threat modeling becomes scaled in a company, or how much it's appreciated, and how much it can happen as well. So you can take all of these data and you start trying to infer stuff from it, which I think is part of the value of the report, really. And obviously, like, we struggle. That was one of the challenges we've already mentioned. Learning threat modeling, again, I think we'll all appreciate that challenge, that we work with teams who do threat modeling because they somehow needed to do it, and then, you know, are reluctant to spend the cycles to try and really get into the process a lot. Not everyone suffers from that, but I'm sure we've all come across it. So again, it's unsurprising. And then that last one I think is very generic, and it just sort of says, look, any process as involved as threat modeling that you try and implement within a company is going to have problems, and some of those problems will just be the same across the board, and threat modeling isn't potentially special in that way. But if you skip to the next slide, there were some things that I wanted to call out as being more unexpected, and we've got the generic tools one again here, but it's really the other end of that, where that, and even Grant mentioned it, that, you know, I was surprised by the only, like, about a third of people who responded said they use dedicated tools. That number was lower than I was expecting. When I was thinking about this, I thought more people would be using dedicated tools. And, you know, I think that you can ask, you know, what does that mean when only a third of people think dedicated tools are offering, you know, enough value, I suppose, to really make them worth using. And there can be lots of reasons why people do or don't use tools, right? There's always a cost to using them, but, like, you know, we should have tools that help us and make life easier. And maybe the generic tools are scratching that right now, but it seems to me that there's still some space there. And the other one, the 100 threat models a year, that came as a surprise to me. I thought that maybe some people would be doing, and some people are doing a lot more, some people are doing less, but on average and across different industries and different size teams, that's sort of a good ballpark. 10 to 100 threat models is the get. They should probably say, yeah, no, we don't produce more than about 100. And so that was, I wondered what the reasons for that are. I don't have a good answer for why that seems to be the case of what the data is saying, but that is coming through. The lack of reporting and the lack of aligning on metrics. Again, there's a big gap there, right? Like, maybe I had hoped that the rest of the world had solved this reporting problem, and this shouldn't be unexpected to me, but it seems like no. You know, reporting is a hard problem to solve, satisfying people's need for numbers and things like that. And then there's a one about compliance. Any of these stand out for you, Grant, in terms of whether or not you expected them or not?
Well, so there's two. The first is not reporting to management, that the lack of reporting. And because of this answer, I have a bunch of questions I want to add to this year's survey. Like,
Yeah.
is that because management don't care, or is it because You have to tick the tick box for compliance. Why aren't you reporting it? Why aren't they interested in it? Because it's time. Back to the previous slide where you're talking about how generically these sort of processes can be complicated. It's not special for threat modeling. One of those generic reasons is it's time, it's resource that's going into a process without a clear, obvious, direct gain for the company. And yet we're still doing it. We're doing about 100 threat models a year. Somebody in the chat just mentioned that the size of the team doesn't seem to matter either as to the output, which is, that's insane, right? We're still doing that much threat modeling and we're not reporting on it. Why? Why? I had more questions than I wanted. And then the other one, we use it for the evidence of compliance. That surprises me too, because one of the other projects I'm a project lead on is the product security capability framework, where we try to map capabilities and activities in DevSecOps or SDLC to compliance requirements. And there's surprisingly few compliance sections that actually require you to do threat modeling. But clearly, we do use threat modeling for evidence of compliance, even if we don't admit to it. Which, I think that's a nice spin on the end there, Dave. We don't always admit to it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, what has surprised you in the report? You've covered it quite eloquently, the pair of you, and in that there's kind of the unexpected.
Well, actually, there's a couple more that if I could just finish off a few more that I remembered today. I had a look through, because the list we have there is just from the conclusions, and I thought, well, I wonder if there's some other stuff, if I have a quick look through it, that jumped out at me, and certainly there were a few that maybe didn't make the big headlines, but I thought were a little bit unexpected. And it was things like a quarter of people aren't using any drawing tools to do threat modeling. I was like, wow, that's unexpected, because we all love the diagram, right? The diagram was always a fundamental part of it, but a quarter of people don't seem to be using those sort of generic tools. And then it was 37% of people aren't using any ticketing software. And these are the questions that come up, right? And it's like, well, how are they tracking all the work that comes out the back of a threat model? Like, there's got to be an interesting story there. And it's sort of the basic premise of some of this data is not what's most popular, but how are the people who aren't doing what's most popular doing stuff, and is that going to be beneficial for them to share how they go about stuff? The trust boundary stuff I thought was also interesting. Like, I didn't really think people would align on the definition they did, and it was a lot of people, much more than I thought. It was 60-something%, and I was like, wow, that's much more agreement in this community than some of the posts people have about trust boundaries. I was like, oh, there's a lot of disagreement. This one will be widely split. And the data came back and everyone was like, no, we pretty much use this definition. I was like, oh, okay. fair enough. What else was there? I had here that half people use internal security requirements to generate their threats. And I thought that was quite interesting and a little bit unexpected, because that meant that people have a relatively mature security requirements program in their businesses then. And I would have said I wouldn't have thought security requirements was particularly mature in many companies, but it seems like there's a relatively good number of people who can leverage off the back of that as part of their threat modeling.
But that does pose more questions, right? Because are those security requirements generic requirements that they're grabbing from some list somewhere? Is that list maybe like the ASVS or something like that? Like, Paul, you understand how we ended up with so many questions?
Oh,
if I'd have thought of these questions when we were writing that, we would have had these questions as well.
We could potentially still be filling in the survey right now, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine. Claire's put in the chat here that she's surprised by the lack of management reporting, especially when they are often the ones driving the compliance needs, which threat modeling helps with.
That's exactly my feeling too. I mean, we're spending expensive resource time, right? Because there aren't enough people, there aren't enough security people to do threat modeling, and we're pulling engineering teams to do threat modeling with us, and they're working on that instead of building product and pushing features, which costs money, right?
Yeah.
And yet we're not reporting on how we're spending that time and resource money. It's just, yeah, it's crazy to me too.
So we've did. So go on, Dave.
I've got more unexpected
more.
things that I think are worth
Go.
mentioning.
Go.
They
Yeah.
just keep on coming. Like AI is, you know, you can't open your front door without being bombarded with AI this or AI that, right? And we didn't feature it heavily in the survey, but there was at least one question being like, you know, you're using AI much for generating threats or helping you and stuff like that, and it's just like, no, not really. Was the large response. For a lot of people were just, you know, not using it at all, which I think is there's a bit of a, you know, it's a strange one compared to how much we're bombarded on a daily basis about AI, right? So I thought that was quite unexpected in a way.
For me, that
No,
would
no,
be
but-
unexpected as well, considering what the technology can do.
But it's not unexpected to me, because think of the time period we're talking about, right? It's last year.
Yeah.
We spent 6 and 7 months of this year now being bombarded with AI in threat modeling, because I've seen about, I don't know, 5, 6 products the last week that are threat modeling using AI. But last year, AI was writing code. It wasn't helping us find bugs. It wasn't helping us discover threats. That's been a pivot. Like there was one product, maybe 2 that I knew of, and a couple of like home-built, home-baked, specialized LLMs that were doing it for organizations. B-Sides had a rookie track talk about a couple of guys who put together one, which was pretty good. But there wasn't a lot of it happening last year. It's really this year that's blown up. So I expect to see that change this year's report.
Another 18 questions into the mix around AI, use of AI in threat modeling and everything like that.
Which model is most appropriate?
Which model is most appropriate? Yeah. So which leads me on nicely to my next question is, how do we actually, I'm not going to say improve the report, because I think we could probably go more granular, but how do we do that how do we do that?
I mean, the step one is that it's definitely happening again this year, right? There's no doubt that we're gonna run the report again. We're gonna modify it. We're gonna make it better. But now that we've got a bunch of people who are interested in the output of the report, hopefully that'll mean we get a bunch of people helping us to define those questions and maybe narrow things down and focus us on specific aspects. Yeah, so there's a bunch of suggestions on here. Please create posts, ping us, inundate us with requests and suggestions, volunteer your time. You may discover that there's a lot more of it that you're going to put into this than you thought, but please do volunteer it to get involved and help us make a better version of the report. The questions need to be updated. We need to review them. Some of the questions, the data leads me to believe that maybe we didn't ask the question quite the right way. We did work on phrasing, on exactly trying to be as explicit as we could, but I think in some cases we might have either missed that, or we need to review the data to figure out why we end up with questions going the way they did. And yeah, lots of why questions. The ones that I've been asking as we've been talking, those are going to have to be in the next version of the report. I think that will make it better.
Dave, what are your thoughts? Yeah, I was going to say, Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's all there to be done, and I think when you do something like this for the first time, you're just not going to get it completely right. I think like we just, even from day one, we were like, we're gonna give it a shot. We're gonna do our best, and we're gonna just know that as we continue to do it, we hope to improve. But we're gonna have some misses, and I think misses is maybe a bit harsh, but once you have some data, you tend to be able to do better the next time around, because you see what the information was, and you can use that data to guide better questions in the future, so that
We've
we can
created a
ask why
baseline, right?
sometimes.
We created a baseline,
Yeah,
yeah.
a bit of a baseline, and a lot of the work we did in asking people for responses on a scale, it was so that when we do future reports, we can sort of see how the sentiment is shifting over time. That was one of the reasons why there's not a lot of, there are certainly some multiple choice, but there's a lot of like on a scale of like satisfied to dissatisfied, you know, where do you see yourself? And it's so that next year we can ask ourselves, well, people are now a little bit more satisfied than they were, or people are now a little bit less satisfied than they were last time. Things like that is where we're hoping to go. But yeah, there's still a bunch of improvements that we know we can make. So we'll review the questions, and we want feedback, you know, because I know the feedback will be make it shorter. That's a given. I hear that one loud and clear. But everything else, you know, we're certainly open to suggestions, because ultimately, you know, how could this report have served you better? If you can answer that question, then you'll be doing us a massive favor by sharing your opinion.
So how does the community get involved?
Yeah, literally reach out to us on Slack and ask questions. I think talk to us about the reports, talk to us about what you liked and didn't like, and tell us that you're going to throw your hat in and spend time with us refining questions. And then get tons of people to answer. That last bullet point, I can't underline it enough. Like if everybody who signed up for this webinar filled out the report and got 2 of their friends to do the same thing, it would give us so much more data. So please do that. Please absolutely do that.
I think that's really key. First of all, ask questions. Is it the TMC forums is also a great place to post questions. So we can have that conversation there as well. And one of the key things to understand about getting lots of people to respond is that it allows you to correlate data between different questions. If you don't have enough people, then you're trying to say, okay, well, I want to know how many people do reporting, but I want to do it just for this industry. You'll sort of have to, you're now looking at a smaller subset of the data, and the numbers that you can get, the percentages that you can calculate from that are only really meaningful if there are enough people that fit into that subset. And there'll only be enough people that fit in that subset if a large number of people are answering the survey. And it's that sort of correlation between, oh, hey, this company is big, it's in this industry, they have a team of this size, and they aren't suffering from this challenge. Like we can't tease out that sort of information from the survey unless we get a lot of people to answer. And I think that is sort of going to be key.
I do. I think we can.
Any suggestions on how to market it better and reach out to people would also be appreciated, because that was certainly a problem that we didn't necessarily anticipate when we were coming up with the survey, that it might be difficult to reach out to tons of people about it.
I completely agree. Yeah.
You convince them to spend the 15 to 45 minutes it might take to answer the report.
Come on.
But I think
the next version
this year,
with all the extra questions.
I think this year we will as a community get a better response, because we have the fruits of your guys' labor, of what you've actually gone away and done and created, and this teases out the rest of the community. Say, actually, yeah, we've got those granular questions that Grant was saying, and how do we ask 5 questions in regards to this one question? And I think, me being very biased, obviously, I think we're going to get more engagement around this, particularly within the forum and off the back of this webinar. So I want to kind of draw it to a close there. So is there any, I'm just looking in the chat now, there's no particular questions in the chat. Is there any questions before we move on from anyone in the chat?
I'd like to briefly touch on what Gareth just pasted in the chat, or just typed into the chat.
Oh, yeah, just seen.
So the question about the thing that surprised us about, did we do a good enough job? Are we doing the good enough job? Yeah, I think fundamentally, a lot of us treat threat models as an artifact. And this is my very unpopular opinion, so feel free to slate me. I don't think threat models should be an output of threat modeling. I think that threat models are a process and an artifact used in the creation of threat model, in the doing of threat modeling, but the output should be better code. So Gareth's saying that threat models are left to rot. That's true. It's because we treat them as an output. We now have a threat model. We're going to stick it on a shelf somewhere, and maybe we'll come back and dust it off. And in the survey, Dave mentioned it earlier, we are actually updating. There are clear signs of people updating threat models and revisiting them and refreshing them. But I don't think we're doing that enough. And maybe it's because we've seen this as this artifact that we need to keep somewhere. I think threat models should be thrown away after they've been useful in creating backlog items to make the code better, or to do items or projects to make the infrastructure better. And then do again or start over. But it's an unpopular opinion.
I mean, so this is a question we asked, right? Like we asked how do organizations handle threat model updates, and 55% of people said the existing threat model is updated under a version control scheme, even with previous versions available. So I would say the data says, and this is a great one where someone chimes in, oh, people aren't treating this as a one-off exercise, and I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. But like half the people who in the report in the survey are saying, well, actually we will update threat models, and then we even treat them under version control. And the version control aspect was also a bit of a surprise to me. I didn't think many people would be doing that. So it's interesting, right? It's like the data here. Again, you can have someone's opinion about what they think how people treat threat modeling, and now we have some data, and it says actually about half the people will be updating threat models. So it's certainly not as common maybe as it should be, but unless you're Grant, it tells us what the community is doing for right or wrong, and then what you really want to do is correlate that to other information for maybe what approach to threat modeling are you using that tells you that, hey, it's okay to throw away threat models because of the way we do it in overall sense, or actually it's a really good thing that you're holding on to them because of the way you do them, or your industry needs artifacts because you've got compliance requirements, and threat modeling is listed as something you have to do, in which case you can't throw them away because you need to give them to an auditor. Everyone's situation is going to be different. And that's why we'd be really great to get more responses so we can sort of tease out some of those answers to help people.
Even in regulated environments where you are required to do threat modeling, quite often pointing to JIRA tickets that are tagged as the result of the threat model is sufficient for the auditor to go, okay, you did threat modeling to get there. So we still throw them away, Dave, even in those situations. Use threat models all the time.
You've outmaneuvered me, Grant. I'm going to go into my job right now and throw them all away.
Yeah. Okay. Your mileage may vary. Don't do something that's going to get you fired, and definitely don't say, I told you to do the thing that's going to get you fired.
Yeah.
It's a good point about the throwaway threat models, dynamic threat modeling, relying on automation. I think we're going to see more of that with AI. And this year's survey, I predicting we're going to see some of that automatically generated threat models are thrown away because we know we can generate them again if we can get the data.
And then it's the complexity of verifying what what the outputs are, garbage in, garbage out in regards to
Yeah,
AI and LLMs. So yes, maybe
even
cause
good
us
stuff in, garbage out, right?
Yeah, so it may on the front of it, this is going to do all our heavy lifting and all our sort of backbreaking work around the TM process, but ultimately, if you're looking for a steak and it gives you a hamburger, you're going to be like, oh God, it's like you almost have to unpick it. And then at what point do you believe? And also, I think off the back of that, with the more use of AI and integration into this area, it which I personally don't want to ever go anywhere near it, is it becomes more of a tick box exercise than it currently potentially is, by someone just chucking it into an AI tooling and trusting the output, and then going, right, here's our threat model, without actually verifying it. So I think there's a lot still to learn around using AI as a technology. And Gareth's put it in the chat there that they've experimented it and it has been hit and miss. So I think there's a culture around it as well.
You wouldn't believe how long the conversation between Dave and I was around defining what threat modeling as a process even was. Like we had some really good conversations about that, which is why the questions ended up in the direction they did.
Yeah,
I have to say for the AI side of things, though, that like one of the main problems, the biggest challenge that came out of the report was just getting this complete picture of information. And unless you are expecting the world to structure information in terms of architecture and design and things like that for input into our systems, AI is probably the best hope we have that can take unstructured information that might exist and then turn it into something that is structured, that we can then use as a model and analyze for input. So for me, I'd love it if someone went away and solved that leading challenge from the survey, like how are we going to get information, that get a complete view of a system so that we can accurately come up with those threats, right? And in my head, and I hope I'm not so much wrong, but I hope someone comes up with an easier way of doing it. AI could be the one hope we have. So it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, I think, because I know as people have said, there's certainly a whole different set of challenges once you start going down the AI path.
Yeah.
So I like the approach you're proposing there, Dave, because you're talking about using AI to take unstructured data to provide inputs to a model. I think the worry is they take the unstructured data and they produce a thing we put on our shelf, and hopefully a list of things we need to go and fix. And nobody looks at any of the process in between. That terrifies me. I don't know how we'll get to there, but that's the end state. That's the end goal, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other thing would be that if we can solve that problem, then because scaling, for me, I was almost surprised that scaling threat modeling within a business wasn't higher up the list of challenges. It was in the top 10, so it's certainly one I think that everyone can relate to. But if we can solve for some of this gathering of information, then certainly that will help to scale threat modeling as well, I would have thought. Although, to be fair, some people responded that they had no problem with like threat modeling all of their systems and things like this. And if you are one of those people, please create a post on the community forum and tell us your secret, because I think we're all dying to know how you can manage to have a process that threat models and gets through everything. And I would encourage everyone who sees themselves in the minority within any of those answers in the report. I feel like you've got a story to share that everyone will benefit from hearing.
100%. 100%. I'm just conscious of time. So if there's any more questions in the chat, we can pick them up separately. I want to firstly thank Dave and Grant for putting up with me for the past 40 minutes. It's much appreciated. Eloquently explaining the report. And I can't wait for this year's one. I'm going to be firing so many questions. You're going to get bored of me, 100%. So there's going to be loads of questions coming your way. Again, thanks very much for attending and being the guests on this awesome webinar. And I'll hand back over to Shunning.
Thank you.
Awesome. So much, Dave, Brent, and Paul. Let's give them the virtual round of applause for such an amazing session. Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you to all of you for the great questions, the comments that you put in the chats, for all the engagements that you shared with us today. Before we wrap up, let's take that famous TMC meetup group photo as part of our meetup tradition. And if you would like to be in, we'll give everyone a few seconds to turn on your camera. And this is fun, so join us. Wonderful. And it looks like Zoom doesn't allow me to have more than 25 people in one screenshot, meaning we'll have to do it twice. All right. I'll give it 3 more seconds. If you want to join, turn on your camera. Awesome. All right, we'll go. 3, 2, 1, say cheese. That's the first one. Do another one. Okay. 3, 2, 1, say cheese. Complete. Thank you, everyone. All right, the photo is done. Now I just have a few quick closing announcements before I let you go. So for today's session recording and slides, they will all be posted to the TMC forum afterward. I'll try to get them in tomorrow, by the end of this week. So check back on the TMC forum if you want to rewatch this recording and if you want to get those slides. And something fun. So in the TMC forum, we are kicking off a new weekly thermaling discussion series. We call it Weekly Peer Perspectives. The idea, super simple. We want to explore one new thermaling topic each week. And we want to encourage community to share your experience, your secrets, like Dave said, if you see yourself in being the minority in one of those survey questions. What we're gonna do is starting from this week, actually today, for the first, I think, 7 weeks, for each week, we will dive into one key finding from the SOTM survey. And this week, we're talking about stride, right? If you read the report already, stride seems to still be the most popular or mainstream framework, but that's not to say stride is without any challenges. So we encourage you to check the TMC forum. Thank you, Claire. Claire already put the discussion there. Go check it out and share your experience with stride and join the conversation. And I should have mentioned this first. If you haven't grabbed your copy of the report yet, you can download it now, of course, for free at thermalingconnect.com. Okay. And if you're looking for more insights, more discussions around an SOTM report, survey, or just thermaling in general, and one of this meetup just doesn't scratch the itch, don't miss ThreatModCon. That's our community's global conference that's taking place twice a year now, in Europe and in the US. So the ThreatModCon 2025 DC is going to be the last ThreatModCon of this year. And Dave and Brent Scope, they are going to host a special session on SOTM. So good. We hope we'll see you there. If you're planning to attend, the early bird pricing ends by the end of this month. You'll get 20% off if you get the early bird pricing. So great content, passionate practitioners like all of you, and fun networking stuff. We have ThreatModCon nights that's been really, really fun. So definitely can't miss events if you're able to travel. And finally, if you haven't already joined our community yet, if this is your first TMC event, Don't forget to sign up to join our community. Just go to modelingconnect.com or just search for Modeling Connect and join the community. And this way you get sign up for our newsletters. This is how you stay up to date on all of our events, latest contents, different projects like SOTM, and you will also get notified of our weekly discussions. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you again, everyone, for being here, joining us, and being part of it. Truly, truly a pleasure to see you at each of our events. So we hope to see you in our forum at ThreatModCon or at any future meetup very soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.